Hi everybody, FIDE Master Dennis Monokroussos here, and I'm sure that like all of you, I've been following the World Chess Championship match very closely. There are a lot of things that we can say about the match, but that it's exciting is not one of them, unfortunately. However, the US Championship has been very exciting, and it's starring some very good players too, including Hikaru Nakamura and Gata Kamsky. And Kamsky in particular, at least as of this recording, is in exceptional form and is in fact leading the tournament with 7 points out of 9. Very good score. He and Nakamura are going to play later today. Perhaps that game will be finished by the time you guys get to see this. But in round 9, at any rate, Kamsky won with a very nice bit of preparation against Yasser Seirawan. And it's kind of interesting because Kamsky, in general, is not really a guy who's been renowned for his, razor-sharp preparation. More often, there was a period, certainly, during his comeback, where his opening play was really his weakest point. And, of course, he worked very hard to remedy that. Playing in a bunch of candidates' events forced him to remedy that. And, but still, generally he's playing kind of solid openings, trying to get positions where he can just play and grind away at his opponents. But in this game, there was no grinding. His poor opponent, Yasser Seirawan, just really got beaten pretty badly. But it was some really nice prep, as I said, by Kamsky. Well, let's have a look. It's, I think, an attractive game, and it's an attacking kind of setup that has become fairly common of late in the Caro-Kann, or against the Caro-Kann. So Kamsky had white, and we have a classical variation. Seirawan has been a big exponent of this way of playing for many, many years, for decades. And Kamsky himself sometimes plays the Caro-Kann with black. Okay, e6. Now, at one time, queen to c7 was just about universally played in a kind of an automatic way. And it's still certainly an important move, but nowadays e6, I think, is kind of taken over. Knight g to f6 is also played. Anyway, sometimes white plays bishop to f4 here, trying to kind of punish black for not playing queen to c7. And then you usually have this little game here with queen a5 check and bishop to d2. And of course, black can still play queen to c7 if he wants and return to the old familiar setup. But bishop to b4 is popular. c3, bishop b7, c4, and now queen to c7. Well, what's the idea there? Well, it can often be a transposition anyway, but it's it forces white to play c4 very quickly, and maybe he wants to do that, maybe he doesn't. So if he's going to castle queenside, there become options like b5 come available. Anyway, white often castles, knight g to f6, knight e4, and castles kingside. Another recently popular approach for black. It's been known, but it's become really quite a major setup for black over the last few years. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is to point out that white will sometimes play here systems with a quick g4. So one line is to play knight f6, and then g4. And after knight takes g4, rook h to g1. And so then you have, typically these kinds of positions, black having two responses. You can either play f5 or knight takes f2. Of course, if he plays knight f6, white just rips off the h-pawn. So that's not a very smart way for black to play. So f5 is unclear. In this position, knight takes f2 is a mistake. Queen e3, knight d1, queen h6. And only the spectacular bishop to g5 prevents black from an immediate loss. But still, after queen takes g5, renewing the mate threat, f6, and that's the point. So the bishop had to get out of the way, so the queen on c7 would protect on g7, queen h4. And here the knight is trapped. White is going to have two pieces for a rook and a pawn, maybe two pawns, I guess, on knight takes b2. But black's kingside is very vulnerable. H6 or bishop h6 or a variety of other approaches are forthcoming. It's not a happy position for black. In fact, after knight b2, maybe white can even play h6. I'm not sure, but at least it should be looked at. Anyway, so that's one way to go. Also, instead of knight f6 and then g4, white has tried g4 immediately, although this is probably okay for black. So there was a game Bacro against Peter Lecco, played in Alista in 2008, that Bacro won with white, but it's probably theoretically worse. So it went like this. If you have to play knight e1, chances are black is going to be okay. So e5, knight g3, e takes d4, knight f5, and now probably the best move for Lecco would have been bishop to g5, and something like this. It's possible when material is even, and white certainly has a bit of pressure on the king side, but his pieces are very passive. Black is active, and should be okay. Should be a little bit better here. In the game, instead, Lecco played rook f5, which is probably okay, but he, slowly got outplayed, and then they reached this position. White's definitely better here, but black played queen takes a2. I mean, Lecco had been aiming for this position, thinking that he would be okay. So here's a little tactics puzzle for you guys. White to move, and what does he do? What is to be done about the threats to the white king? The answer, of course, is absolutely nothing. White goes on with his own attack, and after queen to h7, it was time for Lecco to throw in the towel. If king f8, then bishop to b4 check, and then queen to h8 is mate. C5, bishop c5, and then black has to put something on e7, and the game ends immediately. Okay, if king takes, then h takes g7, and then rook h8 is mating. Alright, so I just wanted to point out that similar variation. Alright, so back to our game. So Kamsky played bishop to d2 immediately, not bothering with any of that stuff. Knight g to f6, castles, bishop b7, knight e4, takes, knight f6, queen d3. And here, black has tried various moves, but the main move here is castling, as was played. I will point out one other move, though, which is knight to g4. It's not even the second most popular choice, but it's been played by some pretty elite grandmasters. For instance, Rodstein in 2010, and no less a player than Alexei Dreyev earlier this year in 2012. And just to give a few more moves of the game, went queen e2, castles, knight e5. So the point of knight to g4, of course, is to plug up this g4 business. So here takes, queen b6, rook f to d8, and queen to b5. So it's very good by Dreyev, not allowing white to just build up on the king side and go crushing here. So takes, bishop b3, b6, c3, a3 to stop b4, and black has just enough activity. I mean, white is still slightly for choice here, but it's not enough, and black held the game. In the game, Gusenov against Dreyev and Plovdiv in 2012, that was, I think, the European Championship. Alright, so Sir1 played the main move here, castles. Now, I mentioned g4 already a few times. Here's another place where g4 can be played. Alright, so g4, knight takes g4, rook h to g1, and here, what does black do? f5 or knight takes f2? Well, f5 has been played in almost every game, but white has good chances here. So he plays queen e2, the usual move, sidestepping the knight f2 fork and hitting the pawn on e6. Here in a game, Lecco Topalov, and this I believe is where Kamsky was doing his preparation for Topalov, because they played, as you recall, a couple of times in big events, in candidates events. Kamsky lost the first and won the second. Anyway, in this position, Topalov against Lecco in Nice, in the blindfold game, played queen to d5, which is probably not the most accurate move. Generally nowadays, black plays king to h7, and in case of, and the computer recommends rook f7, although this has been less tried. But queen to d5 was played by Topalov. Well, c4, queen d6, knight e5, and here Topalov blundered with queen takes d4. It's just a blindfold game. Knight takes g4, fg, rook g4, queen f2, queen e6 check, and here he thought with rook f7 he would be okay, but he missed something big. Okay, this is an easy one. Do you see it? Rook f4. Oops. Black resigned. Okay, so that's f5. But what about knight takes f2? What's wrong with this? Well, it's only been tried once, but it seems like it's okay. It looks like it's just a draw. So it was played earlier this year in a game between a couple of 2600s. Robert Hovhannisyan, who I think is, he's the World Junior Champion now, and Vladimir Akopian, who I don't know if he won the full the full World Junior Championship, but he won at least two of the under ones, like he won under 16 and under 18. And, of course, was the runner-up in the 1999 FIDE World Championship as well. Anyhow, he played knight f2, and I'm sure the rest of the game was probably in his computer beforehand. Might have been in Hovhannisyan's as well, but no one had played knight f2 before this, so Akopian proved that it was fine. So queen to e2, knight takes, bishop f6, bishop h6, bishop f6. Black is up a rook and a pawn, but after bishop takes g7, make it a rook and a bishop. But okay, after h6, the black king is in trouble. Two black minor pieces are dropping, but it looks like black has just enough. Okay, so queen f6. Now if rook g7, king h8, it's a dead end. But white has queen h2. And again, kind of a startling move. He's offering a third piece. You can take the knight on f3 as well, but then h takes g7 just wins immediately. Or at least it seems that way. Takes, and now what in the world does black do? How does he save the game? So this is a good little tactical puzzle. Queen h8 mate is the threat, much more than g takes f8 queen. So how does black rescue himself? Well, there's only one way to do it. It starts with this check. Okay, white plays king to b1. And now what do you do? If queen takes g1, queen h8's mate. If you play something like f5, that's not going to save you either. At the very least, white's gaining his material back, but I think he's getting quite a bit more. So the right move is knight to c3 check. And the reason is that now queen takes g1 is check. And now black saves himself. White is not going to be able to sneak up on the black king here. So queen g5, trying to go to h6 and then give mate on h8, but king h7 stops it. Okay, queen f6, hoping to take on f7 and then play g8. Well, of course that's not going to happen either. And now all white can do is just let the pawn drop and then give perpetual. And that's how the game ended. So, nice game, but it's also the end of the variation. It's just a draw. Okay, so that was g4. Knight e5 is the most common move in the database, and in fact, Sutovsky won a good game in this back in Subotica in 2008. Sutovsky is, or has been at least, at a number of critical moments over the past few years, Kamsky's second. So that's also no doubt instructive. And Sutovsky, of course, is a great specialist at preparation and a tremendous attacking player as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sutovsky had at least a part in what we'll see in the Kamsky-Sirowan game. Anyway, knight e5, c5 takes, queen c7, f4, rook f to d8, queen c4, bishop c5, and black was okay here and went on to win. So rook d to e1, b5 was a nice little shot there. Happy to open up lines. Nadic, very strong grandmaster as well, rejected it, but black was doing quite well. The h-pawn dropped, and black converted his extra pawn. Okay, so let's take a look at the game. So Kamsky plays king to b1, and here queen to d5 was Kamsky's own choice against Jan Smeets in Vaikanze in 2009, and this was just a stub of a game. Knight e5, rook a to d8, bishop b3, b5, g4, knight to d7, f4, takes, king h8, queen d2, f6, and it looks kind of scary for black, but I suppose Smeets was at least as scared by Kamsky's rating and strength. Anyway, no doubt Kamsky had something good prepared here. Sirowan played c5. Okay, and now I think we're out of game citations, so we're just going to look at Kamsky and Sirowan the rest of the way. Well, white plays what is now a familiar idea to us, g4. Okay, knight takes g4. It seems that black never declines this pawn. I mean, if you allow g5, then white gets to attack for free. Okay, queen e2, no rook d to g1 this time. And here, Caro-Kann played a new move. He played king to h8. I'm not sure what the previous move was. I don't think it was a high-level game. Well, actually, there's some decent games. One where black played queen to d5. But, okay, king h8 was chosen. Rook h to g1. Knight f6. D takes c5. And the point of this is that it clears the d file and the a1 h8 diagonals with tempo. So because this is open, white threatens to play here, but he may also want to bring the bishop here, and he's getting to do it with gain of time though. So black played queen to c7, and now knight e5. And here black has to make a crucial decision. The position looks promising for white, certainly, but it doesn't look like anything dramatic is going to happen yet. It looks like white just needs to make some building moves, double on the g file, for instance. Maybe you can consider bishop takes h6 and then queen e3, something like that. Try to make something happen. But at least for the moment, it looks like black has a little time to make some defensive moves. But this turns out to be a very difficult position to really hold. For instance, all right, let's take some kind of hyper-prophylactic move like knight to g8. So we overprotect h6, and we prepare bishop f6. Well, it's not really so clear. Bishop to c3. All right, now the threat is something like knight to d7, hitting the rook on f8 and threatening to take on g7. So, okay, obviously black will play bishop to f6, right? Okay, rook to d7. Queen takes c5, knight f7, and obviously black is in trouble here. Rook f7. Rook f7 is fine for white. It's just an exchange. Well, okay, king h7. Now what? So if queen e4, then queen f5 holds everything together. So what's the problem with black's position here? Well, the answer: rook takes g7 check. Kind of remarkable. If bishop takes g7, then white plays a quiet move, queen to g4. But it's not. It's quiet, but it's not innocuous. There are two mate and one threats. Queen g6 is checkmate, which was kind of the same pattern we were looking at with the queen going to e4. But there's also queen takes g7 checkmate. So black is more or less forced to play rook f7, but then check, check, and checkmate. So bishop takes g7 does not save black. All right, well, how about king takes g7? Now black's got some room to run, right? Well, not really. Queen and g4 check. If the king goes to h7, this is checkmate. So queen and g5, but just knight takes g5, of course, and we're winning the queen, and we're going to have checkmate anyway. So, for instance, knight e7, rook takes, king g8, knight f7, and knight h6, just to give one of the more stylish variations. So black really has to choose between just getting mated after losing the queen or just getting mated straight away. Either way, it's not very good. Well, so let's go back then. So to here we have rook g7, going back, back, back. Well, how about rook a to d8? This makes really good sense, right? We'll just stop rook to d7. Nope, doesn't work. Rook to d7, all the same, is winning the day. So rook takes d7, knight d7. Of course, if queen d7, then bishop takes g7 check is winning. Maybe rook takes g7 wins also. So f6. Okay, this is a better try. Queen g4 threatens mate. Queen g6 threatens the rook. And there's no way to defend the rook. Black can wriggle a little bit with queen h2, but all that means is he gets out only losing the exchange, but the position is still hopeless. And after a4, taking care of the back rank, white would like to play rook to d8 next, or queen to e8. Well, he could play queen e8 anyway, but certainly rook to d8. And black is losing here. Alright, so rook to d7 is a nice shot, and shows that knight to g8 is no good. Okay, how about another move? Just queen takes c5. This looks pretty reasonable. Grab a pawn, and maybe, well, okay, you're at least grabbing a pawn. Beyond that, I'm not sure that it accomplishes too much. But White plays bishop to c3, and again, surprisingly, it turns out that black is losing. The threat is knight to d7, hitting the queen and the rook, and of course if knight takes d7 again, catastrophe befalls black on the g7 square. But, well, why not knight to d5? Well, the answer is bishop to d4 first, getting out of the way, and then c4, and black just gets pushed back. Maybe there's some lines where black can just avoid a complete catastrophe, but at the very best, he ends up with a bad position to rook ending. So he's really in trouble here. For instance, if knight f6, rook g7, and then white kind of wriggles in a bit, and then queen to g3 is winning, because there's the threat of queen g7, but there's also the threats of knight g6 or knight f7, and then queen takes on c7. So that line is hopeless for black. Alternatively, he can play knight to f4, but after queen e4. So this is a relatively good line for black, but only by comparison. Now, that's check there, so there's no mate on g7. And black still has some chances to survive this, but it's certainly much worse. Maybe white has even better somewhere along the way, but if this is the best that black can do, he's in trouble with queen takes c5. There is one move that black can play that I think is probably all right. Rook a to d8. Might be his only move, frankly. And I'm not sure if white has anything fantastic after this. He might. Perhaps Kamsky will show some other poor victim what's wrong with rook a to d8. But this at least seems to keep black in the game. I mean, white can play things like c6 and then play aggressively with bishop to f4. But and he has full compensation. But whether there's anything that's just winning, that I'm not sure. In the game, Caro-Kann played bishop takes c5, and this for sure loses. So you might want to have a deep look if you haven't seen the game already. Obviously, don't use your engine. Try to figure out how white to move wins. So it's a very nice combination. It doesn't mate by force, and it doesn't even win big material by force, but it wins enough in the it wins enough to give white a winning advantage. And there are some lines where black does get mated. Okay, well here's the solution. Bishop takes h6. That's the start of it, which is already pretty remarkable. I mean, it seems as if king h8 was designed to avoid that, but it doesn't. All right, g takes h6, and now what? See, if queen to d2, then if nothing else, then queen takes e5, because queen h6 check, knight h7, and the queen on e5 covers the g7 square. So black is just winning there. So what else is there? Well, the answer, rook to d7. Startling move there. Well, let's puzzle this one out. All right, the obvious move is knight takes d7. And now what does white do? Well, queen d2 this time, because now there won't be any knight to h7. But still, after king to h7, it might take a moment to figure out how this is winning for white as well. So tries like knight takes f7, rook f7, rook g6 fail because black has bishop to f8. Or if you play rook to g6, he can take it safely, so that doesn't get you anywhere. So the only winning move here is knight to g4. And at first glance, this may not really seem all that special. Okay, you're threatening h6, but what about something like f5? The problem is that white has queen h6 check, king g8, and now knight to e5 is checkmate. So the knight cuts off the exit square on the f-file, and the rook and queen take care of the rest. So knight takes d7 just loses. Alright, well how about queen to b8? So the idea here is that queen to d2 can still be met by queen takes e5. Here, though, white can play rook to g6. Another spectacular shot. I don't think this is the only winning move, but it's the clearest. All right, if f takes g6, then it's very easy. Knight g6 check, queen e6 check, and then mate. So that one's not too tough. All right, bishop to d4 is a bit more interesting because now he hopes to get rid of the knight, and if rook takes, then black can play f takes g6 and stand better, probably, maybe even winning. So rook h6 check, king g7, and here white can win either in computer style with queen to d3, which leads to a forced mate like this. So let's give the main line of this. So millions of checks. F3 I think was forced, and now mates are coming, and it's this can be done by humans. You don't need to be an engine to figure this one out. All right, if here, and that's checkmate, and if here, then just simple kind of queen and rook mate. All right, so that's that's the engine approach. Okay, the simple human approach is just to play rook to g6 check, take on f7, and here black is in all kinds of trouble. You can't afford to just move the knight away, because then queen takes e6, or queen d2 and queen h6, or rook h6 maybe and queen g4. I mean, just a ton of things, or queen g4 immediately. So queen h2 is the best try, threatening mate on the back rank. So queen f3 takes care of that, and threatens the knight yet again. Say queen e5, and now c3. And that hits two pieces, and black is losing big material. And of course it also takes care of the back rank problem. So that wins. Alright, so back to rook to d7. So we've seen that knight takes d7 is an easy win. Queen to b8 is a bit tricky, but rook to g6 finishes the job. So finally Caro-Kann played queen takes d7. Okay, knight takes d7, and here Caro-Kann played knight takes d7. And for the moment at least, it looks like black is okay. I mean, he's got a rook and two minor pieces for the queen. The bad news, though, is that white has queen to d2 with a double attack, hitting the knight and hitting the pawn on h6. And of course the pawn on h6 is going to be a mate. Even if knight f6, queen h6, knight h7, there's queen to g7. So that's winning. Before we go on with that, I point out that rook to g8 is a better try for black. Not taking the knight on d7 right away, but because of the back rank mate threat, it buys black some time. However, white can still maintain a winning advantage here. Takes, and now b4. So it's crucial that he can do these two things at once, that he can take care of the back rank while simultaneously attacking the black bishop. So this is enough to keep a winning advantage, although it's still a bit interesting. So takes, rook g1, rook g5. And what black is hoping for is that he can eliminate enough of white's pawns, or maybe all of white's pawns, and lose his knight, his queenside, and even the h6 pawn, but get a fortress, for instance. Okay, so let's look at a line like this. So a4, here we go, a5, h5, and okay, here for instance, alright, if rook takes f2, then a7, alright, if h2, queen h1 covers everything, and then he'll queen, so check, knight b6, and alright, in this case, yeah, white wins, because he's going to pick up the h-pawn. So if the king goes to h8 or h6, then there's queen h4. If the king goes to g7, queen e5 check does the job, and if the king goes to g8, then queen g2 check wins the h-pawn. So that one doesn't work. Okay, well, how about knight a6? So knight a6, queen a6, and now h2, for instance, queen a1, rook f2, c5, king f8, c6, rook f5, king b4, king e7. Okay, make a bunch of moves here, get to the key position. So here, for instance, if queen h2, king takes c6, this is a dead draw. There is no way to break down this fortress. There's not going to be a fatal zugzwang on the black king. White's king is locked out of black's half of the board, and this is just a draw. So, in fact, even without the e-pawn, it's a draw. If the black king gets back to, let's say, g7, and black can play rook to g6, e6 forever. So even with one pawn less, it would be a draw, assuming it's the right pawn. If you got rid of the f-pawn, this would be a win, although a very difficult one. However, back here, white has a fantastic move to win the game, and that's queen to b7. King d6, c7, h1 queen, and now again, queen takes h1, king c7 would be a draw. So let's make a note of that again. but punctuate that one. But instead, white can win here with only one move, I think. C8 knight. And the knight is safe, so white will take the queen for free. And then with the extra knight, white will be able to break down black's attempt at a fortress. So perhaps there are some easier ways for white to win that, but it shows at least that black can put up pretty fair resistance in that position. In the game, it was a bit easier for Kamsky. So queen d2, king h7, again b4, although there was really nothing wrong with queen takes d7. But okay, b4. Here maybe bishop to b6, but he decided to keep the knight instead. bc5, knight f6. Queen f4. And this is a good move because it's going to break down this attempt at a fortress. If knight to d5, then queen to e5. Oh, actually, let me think about this for a moment. Queen e5, rook g8 may not be too terrible for... oh yeah, no, of course, you just play queen e4 check. Queen e4, and if f5, queen e6 is winning, and on this, then queen e5 check. And black has to play f6 and give up the e6 pawn because king h7, queen g7 is mate. So no problem there. Alright, so knight to e8, queen e4, king h8, and now queen b7. Of course, if the knight were anywhere else, well, except for c8, but it couldn't have gotten there, or b8, black would have rook to b8 here. But he doesn't. So knight to g7, queen a7, rook c8, rook to d1, rook to d7, a4, a5. And black is just not even close to being set up to giving up some material to set up a fortress. I mean, white's got 3 passed pawns over on the queen side, and black only has 1 knight to sacrifice for all of them. So this is lost, and Caro-Kann gave up here. Note, by the way, that if something like rook to a8, then white has rook takes f7 check. So that's not going to help black at all. So some very nice preparation by Kamsky, and I would say it's again indication that these g4 systems are very dangerous for black. They don't win by force in most cases, but it's a nasty weapon against black when he goes for kingside castling. So those of you who face the Caro-Kann, should definitely get yourself familiarized with these g4, these different g4 variations. And of course, if you play the Caro-Kann with black, if you're going to castle kingside, you better know how to defend against that. So in this game, it looks like this is the last key moment, and rook a to d8 is forced. So it stops all that rook to d7 nonsense and knight to d7 stuff. It also gives black the chance to swap off a pair of rooks, which is also quite useful when white is trying to kill black on the g file. So this may be a crucial moment for you, but do check out the earlier deviations as well. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. Certainly it was a much livelier game than anything we've seen in the Anand-Gelfand match so far, but hey, 6 games to go. Hopefully all that'll change. All right, so I'll talk to you guys next week. See you then. Bye-bye.